All right. So if you want to introduce yourself. Yeah.
My name is Jasmine, and I blog at 3 Minute Montessori, and I have 2 children, Dylan and Emmeline. They are 5 and about 3.5. And I might know some of the members of your group because I think we've had book clubs in London. So hello to all the London moms and dads who might be in Kareem's group.
Yeah, that's true. You lived in London for how long? A year or 2?
Yeah, just a year.
1 year.
Just a year.
Just a year. Yeah, and I guess you still miss it.
Yeah. Especially now that you get great weather after a very long cold.
Yeah. All right, yeah. Yeah, well, we just have the good weather now, and it's really like, rare. It's like 2 days of very good sun. Okay, so let's keep going with this interview. And yeah, so the other question I had for you is like, how did you discover Montessori? And, what brings you to Montessori and what attracted you to the Montessori education?
Well, I think that the way I discovered Montessori is very similar to other parents, and that was through reading blogs. I read several books obsessively late at night, in between feeding baby. That was when my elder son was about 3 months old, and I fell in love with the philosophy. It resonated very strongly with my own parenting beliefs about raising independent children, and I realized that Montessori was all that and more. But it reached a point where I felt that my knowledge had plateaued from reading what I could on my own, even when I was trying to read Dr. Montessori's books and writings. So that's why I signed up for AMI training. And then I did my AMI training for 3 to 6 in London, as well as 6 to 12. And by that time, I had managed to convince my husband to join me for the 6 to 12 assistance training. So that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible because it's like you took a very special journey in the sense that you moved all the family across oceans, continents to do the training, which is like a very big commitment in time and relocation and budget. It's a very big investment, but yeah, was it worth it? I guess.
We were 100% worth it. We were very lucky because the reason that we moved was my husband's masters. So when he was having a summer break, then he did 6 to 12 course. And as and when I could make time, then I did my training. So I think I even managed to squeeze in an interior design course at Central St. Martin's as well. So that I think has really helped the Montessori practice of how to prepare the environment.
Yeah, which is good. Brilliant. Okay. Yeah, I hope to do the interior design at some point. I just don't have time. I think we talked about it, and it will come in time.
Do you even have an off day?
Yeah, I need a few weeks off. Yeah. Okay, my other questions is a bit because I've been reading your blogs, from the beginning, I think, and I've noticed that your Montessori way to do things has evolved basically, and it has become more and more like simple, minimalistic, and less focused on the materials, the toys, and more on the principles. Obviously, you've done the training, so that makes a difference, I guess. But yeah, I was curious to see, to chat with you why it has changed that way, and yeah, how do you feel about that?
You summed it up pretty much perfectly. Like 2 things changed the way I did things, and I think like if you've read my blog or my Facebook page from the beginning, then you would know that I used to do lots of units with many trays around, revolving around different themes, like an aquatics theme and an animals theme and so on. And I think that one thing that really changed my perspective on the way we Montessori is actually that move from Singapore to London. So there were points when we had no materials at all on our shelves. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, those were the moments when I realized that my children actually played longer, concentrated better, and in a way they were more creative, because then they were just trying to look for materials for themselves from around the house to work with. And so that was one. I think the other thing was I read a book from Konmari, and it's about decluttering. And I to declutter based on other systems before, but this is pretty much the only system that has worked for me. So that like 6 months, 1 year on, I feel that the house is still relatively neat. And what's even better is that the children and the husband have embraced some of the KonMari ways. So that has helped to keep the house. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have chat online about that, and we have exchanged a bit on our blogs, because that's what happened to me as well. And obviously I've done Montessori for 10 years, I trained 10 years ago, and I was basically a hoarder, to be honest, and a Montessori hoarder as well. I was like hoarding Montessori materials and toys and little things, from charity shop to do little activities in the classroom as well. It was not only just for me, but when you discover it, you see everything in the charity shop can be used for a Montessori activity. And, because I was already a bit disorganized and messy, it didn't help. And like you, probably I started to really want to declutter 3-4 years ago, because we were in London and it was very overwhelming to live in a very small flat. Compared to the house we had before. And really 2 years ago with KonMari, I started to really declutter very deeply, and it really helped everyone, as you said, really helped everyone. And I think that's something that happens often to Montessori parents. I notice that there are kind of two kinds of Montessori parents: the one who is already organized and neat and is attracted to Montessori because of that, and the one with maybe a bit like us, order and disorganized and need kind of guidance.
Yes.
And then I feel that it was very good to kind of discover that I was not the only one. And the KonMari method really did help me a lot. There's some stuff in the children area that I didn't really agree with her. And I think I blog about that. And that was I think Montessori did help me further, basically, with the children, because the way we saw the toys, it's a bit different than the way, it's not just about the toys that sparks joy. So otherwise you would keep, many toys that are flashy and noisy, because, they've been offered to your child, and your child would say that they spark joys for them, even if they're very annoying for you. So I think that's a different take on how to sort and declutter the children's belongings than KonMari. That's more in line, I believe, with the Montessori principle, but that goes very hand in hand, in how to set up the house and everything. Yeah, good.
There was, right, this week or last week, I think published in the Telegraph or somewhere, that there is that the more things one has in the house, the higher the level of cortisol women have. That's the stress hormone. So the more clutter one, stressed one is. So that has been, I think, a major factor in the motivation to keeping KonMari and to honoring the children's sensitive periods for order, because Montessori isn't really about things. I think I can say honestly that I was attracted to Montessori because I saw all these beautiful wooden toys for infants, and the more I'm Montessori, the more I realized it just wasn't about your material possessions.
No.
I guess we'll be more about that in later questions, but it really is an aid to life. It starts at birth, and it's really just an approach and a philosophy. And I think that's one thing that is really important for me to communicate through the blog. It's not so much about buying this or buying that will make you a Montessori, because it's not really that simple.
No, and it's not about having the perfect environment either. I mean, we are parents, so we are human, and we live with other people in the house, and life happens. And there are some weeks when the cleanup will not be done, and children, absolutely, children will be children, and it's not about being a perfect Montessori parents. And like for me, I have like 10 principles that I explain to parents, but if there are some that you don't resonate with, like I think like fantasy, for example, is a big thing. Like sometimes some parents just cannot cope with the idea not to read, books with, animals talking or fantasy books, and that's fine. You can still do, apply the main principle would be to respect your child and the way he learns, and encourage independence. That would be the main things. And I think you can do that with any kind of house and any kind of materials. And even if you are working full-time parents and with no budget, it's totally fine. It's all is doable, I think. Yeah?
True, that's true.
So yeah, indeed, you live as well in a very small flat. I think you have explained, and that was the case in London as well. Obviously, living in Singapore, I think it's not common to have a lot of space anyway. So yeah, how do you do that?
Well, my London flat was even smaller. I think it was
All right.
2 bedrooms and a shared bathroom. In Singapore, I mean, I think my latest Facebook post, you can actually get to see like my balcony, and it's tiny. You know, it's not even a. It's literally a sliver of a space. And I think yeah. So coming back to like how do we manage in a small space? Actually, the first thing is just to declutter. You know, like the less that you have, the less that you need to store, the less that you need to organize.
Yeah,
Avoid
absolutely.
single-use items. Yeah, avoid single-use items and just use them on a daily basis. Right now, for instance, I've gotten more into cooking. I used to be a terrible cook, and I think I've improved to about an average cook right now. Yeah, so like there are certain things, appliances that I am relooking, like the blender jug. Do I really need that? You know, the instant pot. It's a lifesaver, but it's taking up too much space on my counter, and I don't use it often enough, really, to justify that kind of counter space. So yeah, so I'm always relooking things. And I think the other thing to note though is that I think we think that children need to have a lot of space to run around, and that is true. But that is, I think, what nature is for. So if you have a space there, just get out in all kinds of weather, and it's great too because then children get to observe, you know, close up the changing of the seasons, and I think like children don't actually need a lot of space if we're talking about being indoors. But what they do need is a place to put each and every one of their precious belongings. And if we have, I mean, and if they have that place for everything and everything in its place, then it becomes quite manageable
Yeah.
to live together.
And yeah, and I believe also, you know, when you live in a small space, you are maybe more connected because obviously you're going to share all those living space. You don't have a, you know, maybe the bedrooms are not big enough to have all their toys, or obviously you don't have a playroom, and it's not
Yes.
necessary. And for us living in UK, we have small houses in general as well. You know, when we compare our houses to those amazing American blocks, you know, we cannot have this kind of space. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I know that some parents have explained that, like, okay, I cannot do Montessori because I don't have this big house, and my children don't have, you know, I don't have the opportunity to have this kind of a kitchen counter at the level in the kitchen because, you know, the UK kitchen are so small. And so, yeah, but we can still do it. And I mean, the smaller the house we have, I feel the more connected we are together as a family. And for example, I had some, because I rented houses for a long time before we had our first house, but we had some house when we had like an extra space that could be used as a playroom, and I never did it because basically my children always wanted to be with me, and for the first years, and I believe, you know, until they want privacy to do, you know, their own things away from their siblings, there is really no need for a playroom. And you know, and as you say, yeah, the house is not really meant to run around inside. I mean, obviously there are some countries when the winter is very long and, you know, muddy and difficult, and yeah, I understand that sometimes you want to do gross motor skills inside, but you know, you can move furniture around for that, I guess, and just keep going. And
Yeah.
probably the things that, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I think like one more element that we often overlook is an element of time, because while we may have a very small space, we don't use the space the same at different times. So I think one really simple example that that most of us probably do is that you know, in London, I had one children's table. That one children's table was the work table. So they would bring the activities there on trays, they would put it back. But of course, we don't work at the same time that we have our meals. So
Yeah.
once they then we will put our dinner plates there, and that will become our dining table. Till today, we don't actually have a dining table in Singapore. We're just getting used to squeezing around the children's table. Yeah. So I think
So you eat with the kids at their own table.
at the very low table, so we sit on
Yeah,
stools, and
good.
the children sit on proper children's chairs. Yeah. So I think like if we can use the element of time, we can be a bit more creative with our space.
Absolutely, yeah. And I have a lot of furniture that has a double use in my house. Like, you know, the footstool is a a storage tool, and I have a lot of furniture like that. And I have this kind of, the famous Kallax furniture from IKEA, and it has evolved over the years. I have that for now 7 years, and it was not used for the children at first, and then the bottom was used for the children, and now I've put drawers and doors, because now it stores my own things. So it has evolved over the years, and you can think about this kind of furniture. And another difficulty I find with parents is if you have already decorate your house and set up your house your own way before you have children, sometimes it's difficult to do the transition to a more child-friendly house, because you have this kind of nice furniture that you have invested in it. And I think you have posted about that, some of the furniture you had, and you finally decided to get rid of, because in your new situation now as a mom of 2 coming back to Singapore, it was not the right spot anymore for them, for those furniture.
Yeah. Because I was looking at my home kind of with new eyes after being away for a year, and I realized that it doesn't flow. We talk about flow in Montessori as achieving concentration, as allowing smoothness of transitions. And I think flow is also a word that I learned on the interior design course. And I realized that by having all these bulky pieces of furniture, which weren't actually used the way they were supposed to, they were mainly just used as dumping grounds for all of my unfinished. I was actually blocking the flow of my own home. So once I sold off those 1 or 2 pieces, 2 or 3, and then the space suddenly opened up.
Yeah, that's true. And we just changed our sofa, and for one day we had no sofa, and I was looking at that space thinking that it was great to have all that space, but we definitely need a sofa, because it's a sofa bed, and with us being expats, we need that because we don't have a spare bedroom. So, but I was kind of enjoying the empty space for a day. Okay, so let's get to the other question. So, because your 2 children go to a Montessori school, I believe.
Yes, that's right.
Are they going to go up to elementary, or is it just a preschool? Or
it's just a preschool. In Singapore, someone actually started up a Montessori elementary, but right now it's only open to non-Singaporean citizens. So my children will have to enter mainstream education when they're primary school if they're still in Singapore.
All right. Okay. So for now, obviously, you kind of complement the Montessori education, and they will stay in the Montessori school up to the age of 6, or do they have to enter earlier? 6. Okay. So it's good. At least you have the whole, primary level in the Montessori school.
Yeah.
And so how do you complement, the Montessori education at home? Because I believe you don't take Montessori material in your house for that reason. And maybe explain how it works for you, for your family.
We do have 1 or 2 classic Montessori materials, but I don't actually bring them out very often, because I don't want the children to have a duplicate of what is in their school. Because if they do that, what I've actually heard from my friends who teach in Montessori schools is that then the children will start choosing easy work in school. They might choose snack for ages, or they might just work on practical life when really they might be actually ready for math or for more language. So I think that's why I hardly bring out my own Montessori materials, which were actually gifts from friends. How do I complement Montessori education at home? I think the first thing is to remember that home is not a classroom. I know I say it a lot, but it really is more than a classroom, because when we are at home with the children, we have an opportunity to introduce children to so much more than a classroom can give them. We can introduce them to our culture, our neighborhood, our country, and I think I try to make it unique. I try to bring in my culture through practical life, through art. And again, I really enjoyed having seasonal weather in London, because we only have 1 season here in Singapore. So I really enjoyed working with seasonal fruit and flowers and so on. That was really nice.
Yeah, Yeah, well, I'm a bit in your situation as well because my son goes to a Montessori school, and obviously I don't do Montessori activities with him at home. But a strange thing happened. It's like during the holidays, he always asks for the Montessori material. You know, after a few days, it's like he's bored by his toys, and he says, "Where is the large movable alphabet? I want to write." And so I give it. But I never have introduced material that he has not been introduced at all at school. Okay, I don't, you know, I have some elementary material obviously, but I don't take that out, even if he knows that we have some. And so it's always just reinforcing what he has at school, and I don't even present it because he knows what to do with the large movable alphabet. So I just give it to him, and if he asks me something, I will help him. But you know, I don't introduce basically. I really let him, you know, be independent with his Montessori material at home, and he only want to use that when it's the holidays. It's like, you know, cannot have enough of it. So during the every time he does a bit of maths and a bit of language and geography, he would do a bit with me. And it's as you say, you know, any kind of activities I want to do with the children, generally I do it in a kind of Montessori way, I guess, like a very hands-on approach. Like a little nature table, and you know, craft would be done in a Montessori way, I suppose. And when they were younger, they would have had the craft a little tray to be ready for them. And I've done more with my daughter because basically she didn't really go to a Montessori preschool, so she was with me until 5. So I did more with her in a classic Montessori way at home. But definitely for my son, he is in an IMI Montessori school, so I'm very happy with his school. So I don't feel the need to do anything at home Montessori. But you know, all his toys, everything is set up in little tray baskets downstairs. He has more kind of educational toys, kind of more educational toys that complement what he does at home, at school, like woodwork and these kind of activities. But it's very independent. He takes everything from, he knows where everything is, and he does his little things. He's very much into making books at the moment. So both making books. So they kind of, he cuts a page and he uses staplers and he do all the drawing and he writes some stuff on each page. And they basically don't know, they're doing together a book about how to deal with plastics, you know, explaining to people that there's too much plastic in the ocean, and they've started that project during the holidays. Yeah, with one drawing and the other one writing. And strangely enough, my daughter is the one drawing, and my son, who is just starting to read and write, is the one writing. So it's quite funny that they've chosen this kind of path to do, each of them. But yeah, it's great. And I haven't done anything. I really feel like it's kind of
influenced by your husband, because I understand that he just wrote a children's storybook.
Yeah. So we basically, I think they really see us making a business, you know, and so they're really much into that, and that's I kind of follow them. I think as a Montessori parent, I really support the interest still. You know, my daughter is 10 and she has started to be interested to movie, obviously, seeing me on the camera all the time. So she's starting to do a little movie with her brother, and she wants to do, you know, all the setup and everything by herself and the script. And so she does that, you know, that's what she does on holidays. And, you know, I don't have a lot of input in their game or in their toys, only if they ask, and they're really independent. Like the last holidays, we don't see them. Basically, they go up and down in the garden and they do their own activities. They don't really ask us to do something with them anymore. Obviously, they're older, they're 6 and 10. But I think that it has been like that for a few years for my daughter, that she does her own things. And my son definitely, like for the last year, has become totally independent into what he wants to do. And unless he wants to play a board game, he doesn't really ask, you know, to do something with us anymore. And so he does board games with us and cooking. Yeah, we do cooking with them as well. And so that leads us to the next question, in fact. It is about cooking.
Okay.
Yeah, so because, you say you're not a good cook, but my God, you know, you post lovely picture of you cooking. You're definitely good at taking picture of the meals you do. And yeah, it looks yummy from my point of view, from my side.
It looks better than it tastes.
No, you're too modest, I think. Okay, so what are your tips to cook with children? Because you seem to cook a lot with them, and you know they are 3 and only 5, so they're quite young still, so they're probably still learning a lot of skills. So if you want to share some tips about how to cook with children.
Sure. I think the first thing is actually to give them a safe but sharp knife. Well, that's not the first thing. Obviously, you'd have done lots of other things with them. But I think that the most important tool, because I get asked this when I conduct workshops for parents living in Singapore, is what tools must we have? And the answer is we don't actually really need anything for the children. But the one thing that I would pay money for is a really sharp, really safe knife when the children are ready to handle knives, and they know that knives can be dangerous, but knives are very useful when used carefully. And I think the other thing is really to just continue to bring in your culture through cooking. Practical life is so perfect for that. For instance, in the last couple of weeks, I have used blue peas, rice, tofu, pandan, edamame, and I think these are some of our local and our Asian produce, and it's really nice to see the children getting in touch with the culture through that. The children actually enjoy practical life. They've been doing things like washing rice since they could stand on a kitchen stool, I guess.
Yeah.
My daughter, she's 3.5. She helps me almost every day. She's a great sous chef. But my son is actually not so interested in practical life right now. He's having an explosion into writing and reading. So he's really more interested in writing and things. But he told me just a few days ago, he said, Mama, Mei Mei is a little sister in Chinese, so he calls my daughter his Mei, his little sister. So he said, Mama, Mei is your sous chef because she helps you, but I am your chef because I make things for you by myself.
That's a nice way to say it. And that's right, they go through phases when they want to help, and it's very true for the young toddlers. They're really into helping so much in the house. So I think as parents, we really need to embrace that phase, even if it's slowing down and it's not that easy, to be 3 years old in the kitchen, or even for parents in this group, the people who come to my play groups, they have younger toddlers, and they said, yes, he's into everything. He wants to help, but he's like 18 months old. What can he do? And sometimes you give them a task that is not really, a purposeful task for the cooking. Like I remember my daughter washing, the scrap of vegetables for ages, and she probably believed she was helping me, but I was keeping her busy, and she was doing something, a good skills for her hands, but not for what I was preparing. And then you give them skills that is maybe not, we used to eat cucumbers a lot because that was easy for them to chop. It was not probably what I wanted to eat, but at least that was making them do something.
We eat mushrooms all the time because it's easy to chop.
Yeah, that's it. You find stuff that has, that they can manage and that makes them satisfied, even if it's not what you need. And I think there are some other period when they will be less into practical life and less into cooking, and then they're coming back to it again. Like my daughter was certainly less into it, and now what she likes is to have something more challenging, like really cooking the recipe from start to finish. So she choose a recipe in a cookbook. She would go to the shop with us and take the ingredients, or we would order for her because we do a lot of online shopping for food. And then she would, choose a day during the week when she's going to cook, and she would have the whole meal, and she does everything. And now she's even able to light a match and, turn on the cooker. So, which is something that's a bit challenging for her still. So she needs to be supervised because she's a bit afraid of the match. But, she does it and she cooks the whole meal, and she's so proud to be able to do it. But just helping peeling the potatoes is not something that she likes. And it's like really much like, oh, yeah, well, I really don't want to do that. But
she wants to move on.
Yeah, she wants to do the whole thing. So that's an age. I think when they grow up, practical life become more a challenging, a bigger challenge. So it has to be a bigger challenge. And like I know that, just chopping the vegetable would not be interesting for her, but that's still something that my son likes to do. And for us as well, it's a way to connect after school, to cook together. So they really do like to cook more with my husband. In fact, they really like to cook with my husband. He's more patient than me with cooking. You know, I'm the Montessori teacher, but he's more patient. So yeah, he cooks a lot with the children and from start to finish. And like for now as well, my son is a bit of a sous chef. And when we do chips, you know, we're from Belgium originally. So I don't know if you know about Belgian food, but typically it's cultural in Belgium to do chips. To do fries.
Okay.
And we have a special way to do it, which is different from UK. So yeah, we like to cook that. So we really cultural as well. And so my son is like running from whatever he was doing to do the chips with my husband. He really likes to do that, and he's very proud to be able to do it. Yeah. So any recipes that you find easy to teach from start to finish to your child, to your children?
I think actually that I was thinking about this, and I don't have any specific recipes to recommend, but what I can suggest is that if you actually look at any of your, any of the recipes that you yourself use, almost all recipes can be broken down into various skills. You know, for example, chopping, or grating or whisking, and when you break it down into different skills, and then you realize that maybe there is a certain skill in there that your child can help with. And for some of us who aren't very good cooks, even pressing the correct button on the microwave is also a skill, right?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, so I think like if we look at it as especially for younger children who aren't able to complete the entire recipe the way your daughter can, then I think choosing like one or two skills and giving them the opportunity to repeat and repeat and repeat that skill. Like we were saying, it doesn't matter if we have like 3 days worth of mushrooms, but what's important is that the child had this opportunity to repeat the skill, and through that repetition comes concentration. And ultimately, it's what we want for our children, which is that we want them to be able to concentrate. We want them to be able to be independent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, good. It was very good to talk to you. And yeah, regarding the recipes, I will post a picture because I've started to do that. And I don't know why I waited so long for that. I think when my children were very little, I was a bit like in a way, a perfectionist. So I was looking for the perfect way to show the recipe. So I remember going online and trying to print, this kind of sheet with like all the step broken down and doing that in my word processor. And it was never, I wanted it to look like. And then I remembered that I started to see that on Instagram, and that brings some memories when I was in nursery school. The teacher used, obviously we didn't have computers at the time. So the teacher used just to draw the step. And it was so easy for us, to see 2 eggs and pour milk and this kind of thing. So I started to do that. I did one for the pancakes because like that, my son just followed all the steps by himself. He doesn't even ask me what's come next. And I did that for the coffee machine as well. And as you say, when you do that properly and you draw every step and you write down, I write some words as well because they can read. And then I realized I forget a step because my daughter was doing everything. And I look at her and said, why doesn't she put the water, in the coffee machine, the right area of the coffee machine? And because I didn't write it down and I didn't draw it down. So you realize the steps. So it's a very good exercise, as a parent to break it down in writing the recipe and really see every step, because even when you read a recipe yourself, sometimes they forget some steps, in a very good book. So yeah, I think that was, and I will post a picture of that, like that, that just has to be simple.
Visual recipe? Is that what it's called? A visual recipe?
A what?
A visual recipe. So it's something like
it's like a visual recipe. Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't know it has a name. It's just like you draw your recipe for your child, basically. And I remember having that little cookbook when I was little, done by my teacher. It was just a carbon copy for each of us. I didn't keep it, which is sad. It was a very Montessori cookbook with very super easy recipe. It was super easy recipes because that was recipes we were doing when we were like probably 3 or 4. And yeah, like I remember the nettle soup. I don't know if you have ever tasted nettle soup, but yeah, made from nettles. Yeah, and we did that. We did that a few years ago when my daughter was around 2. We went and we gathered some nettles at the spring season, wash them, and make some soup with it. She was very impressed. Okay, so. So just let's see. I don't know if you have many viewers. I cannot really see on that program. So if you're watching live and you have some questions for Jasmine, just put them on no, and I will post you. That's you blog. I'm sure many people knows you already, and it was very much a pleasure to chat with you. So just let's chat